Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, hit subscribe so you'll never miss the most courageous dog tales we share every day. Tonight, we're taking you to a place you might think you know, a quiet American small town, where the snow falls soft and secrets are buried deep. But sometimes, even in the most unsuspecting places, a silent sentinel stands guard, and a single bark can echo a cry for hope that changes everything. This is the story of Officer David Miller, his loyal Labrador Shadow, and a night that redefined heroism. The biting cold of Harmony Creek, Ohio, sank into Officer David Miller's bones. It was late December, snow falling in thick, silent curtains, painting the tired streets a ghostly white. David, a veteran of countless patrols, knew these streets like the back of his hand, especially Willow Lane, where porch lights usually offered a comforting glow, and folks mostly kept their doors unlocked. A quiet beat, a routine ending to another long shift. He was dreaming of warm leftovers and blessed sleep, the mundane rhythm of a small-town cop's life. But tonight, a strange electric hum thrummed beneath the quiet. It had nothing to do with the freezing weather. It was like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to crack. A chilling whisper in the back of his mind he couldn't shake. An undeniable premonition. Beside him, Shadow, his loyal grizzled Labrador and retired canine partner, walked with his usual calm. But then, it happened. Shadow froze. Every muscle in his powerful body coiled tight. Ears pinned forward, a silent, primal tension radiating from him. David saw that look in his eyes, the one that cut straight through your calm like a surgeon's scalpel. Then, the bark. Not a playful yelp, not a casual woof. This was a full-throated, chest-rattling roar, sharp, rapid, angry. It tore through the silent, snow-dusted night, shattering the peace of Willow Lane. David tried to pull him away. "Come on, buddy, let's go." But Shadow stood rooted, a statue of defiance, staring down the street. A sanitation truck rumbled towards them, driven by a burly man in a neon vest, Earl. Earl shouted irritably, "Hey, cop, get your mud out of the way, we got a schedule to keep." He shot David a glare filled with disdain, a silent challenge that spoke of resentment for anyone who disrupted his routine. David felt that familiar spike of frustration, apologizing to Earl, thinking his dog was just spooked. But David knew better. He'd seen that stance before, during their tours overseas. That was the look Shadow had when he'd sensed an IED, or something far worse, something explosive. This wasn't a war zone. This was Harmony Creek. So why did he feel a cold, insistent ripple of dread roll down his spine? As the truck's hydraulic arms began to grip a large, black industrial bin, Shadow lunged, barking wildly, desperately. David roared, "Wait, stop the lift!" Earl grumbled, "What's the problem now?" He hesitated, clearly annoyed. But something in David's urgent, uncharacteristic tone, the raw panic in his voice, made him pause. His hand slammed the emergency brake. And in that agonizing silence, a horrifying sound echoed from the suspended bin, not just a scrape but a faint, desperate gurgle, then a distinct, almost imperceptible click of a tiny buckle against metal. A mere millisecond before the compactor blades would have engaged, something scraped inside, something light, something alive, and then a sound that would haunt David forever. The faintest, most fragile whimper. Life, hanging by a thread. A breath. A silent bark. David scrambled onto the truck's rear step, flashlight in hand. The biting cold was quickly overshadowed by the stench of damp cloth and something coppery. Blood. That hit him first. His hands, tearing through layers of paper and rags, were frantic, desperate. And there, curled into a fetal ball inside a torn blanket, was a newborn baby. Tiny, blue-lipped, eyes shut tight. A weak cry fluttering out of his lungs like air from a punctured balloon. A single, flimsy, almost invisible pink ribbon was caught on a jagged edge of the bin, just inches from the baby's fragile head. A breath away from oblivion. David's training kicked in. He barked orders at Earl to call EMS, then ripped off his own jacket, wrapping the fragile life tight, cradling the tiny body against his chest. Shadow stood nearby, utterly silent now, tail down, eyes locked on the baby, protective, watchful. David crouched beside him, voice thick with raw emotion. "You did good, boy, you did real good. You saved him." The profound contrast hit him. A life almost crushed, snatched from the jaws of death by a dog's relentless bark. This was why Shadow was here. The ambulance screamed away, its siren fading into the cold night. David remained, helping local officers canvass the area. The dissonance was jarring. A quiet, idyllic neighborhood, its perfect facade shattered by this horrific act. But even after the baby was taken to the hospital, Shadow didn't immediately calm. He kept sniffing the air, occasionally emitting a low, mournful whine, and staring intently at various houses, particularly a specific white house with peeling shutters. Chat. It was like he knew the danger wasn't gone, only moved. The tension hadn't broken. It had merely shifted. That unsettling feeling gnawed at David, pulling him back to Willow Lane the next morning with Shadow. David's gut, reinforced by Shadow's persistent unease, told him something still sat wrong. Shadow paced in slow circles, sniffing, alert but not alarmed, eventually leading David directly to that white house, belonging to Mr. Silas Thorne, a retired steelworker. David found a torn baby wipe packet on the porch, then, half hidden behind the bushes, a plastic grocery bag. Inside, blood-stained fabric, an empty formula bottle, a cracked pacifier, and a crumpled note. "I'm sorry, please don't hate me, I had no choice, he made me." The words sent a chill through David. This wasn't just abandonment, it was a desperate choice, hinting at coercion. A cry for help that had been stifled by fear. He brought the evidence to Detective Maria Sanchez, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "This smells like coercion, maybe abuse," Maria murmured. David agreed, his voice tight. "We were seconds away from losing that kid, Maria. Seconds." Just then, a distraught man in his late 20s, Mark Jensen, approached the station, claiming to be the baby's father. He looked genuinely upset, but his eyes darted around nervously, avoiding David's direct gaze. David noticed his overly dramatic despair, a performance that felt off. Maria, ever shrewd, watched him calmly, her expression unreadable. A red herring, David thought. A performance to throw us off the scent. Later, reviewing security footage from a neighbor's Ring camera, David remembered his old acquaintance Gary, who owned it. Gary, a seemingly harmless man, was secretly a distant relative of Charles Ramsey. He had initially been uncooperative, claiming technical difficulties with the camera. But Shadow had given a low growl whenever Gary was mentioned. David, trusting his dog more than ever, insisted on the raw footage. When they finally got it, it revealed a hooded figure at 3:12 a.m., carrying the bin. The way the figure moved wasn't careless or hardened. It was broken, panicked. Maria's voice was chilling. "That's not someone dumping garbage. That's someone begging not to be seen. And Gary," she added, turning to him with a piercing gaze, "you seem to have conveniently lost the crucial few minutes before that. You lied." The betrayal stung. A stark reminder that evil could hide behind a friendly face, even in Harmony Creek. Armed with a warrant and a grim determination, David returned to Mr. Thorne's residence. Mr. Thorne was out, but in a back shed, partially buried beneath old lumber, they found more baby items, and crucially, a half-used notebook. On the margin of one page, scribbled in a desperate hand, "I can't tell anyone. He said he'd hurt the baby if I did. He watches, always watches." David's stomach turned. This wasn't just abandonment. This was a desperate plea for help, hidden in plain sight, veiled by terror. This was the core twist, the heartbreaking truth. The abandonment wasn't an act of cruelty, but an act of desperate protection. She didn't just leave that baby, David realized, looking at Shadow, who sat patiently by his side. She was running, hiding him from someone, and she left just enough behind, not out of carelessness, but out of desperate hope. Meanwhile, baby Hope, now thriving at St. Mary's, remained hypothermic but stable. David re-examined the grainy security footage, a brief, fleeting glimpse of the hooded figure's face as she turned. Young, maybe 15, 16 at most. Not a criminal, a terrified kid. Maria confirmed the baby blanket's origin, a county clinic. "So she's local, scared, alone," David mused. Maria added, her voice grave, "Or being hidden by someone, being controlled." Back at the station, Mark Jansen, the supposed father, crumbled under Maria's precise, relentless interrogation. He wasn't the father, just a small-time opportunist who'd heard the news and saw a chance for easy gain. "I just wanted to look good," he mumbled. "I thought, maybe I could get a payout, or even some fame." Another layer of deceit peeled back, revealing the pathetic self-interest that could fester even in the face of such raw vulnerability. David shook his head. The world was full of shadows, not just visible ones. That evening, David and Shadow returned to Mr. Thorne's house. Shadow tugged at the leash, pulling David towards the trash bins near the alley. And then, David heard it. A voice. Soft, caught in the cold, thin as winter air. "I didn't want to hurt him, I swear." There, behind the larger green bin was a girl. Thin, teenage, her hoodie pulled up around her face, eyes red and swollen from endless crying, arms wrapped tight across her chest like she was trying to hold herself together. David noticed her trembling hands and the way she flinched almost imperceptibly when he moved too quickly. Clear signs of deep-seated trauma and fear. David kept his voice low, gentle. "It's okay. I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here to help." Shadow sat calmly beside him, not barking, but occasionally licking Chloe's trembling hand, an act of silent reassurance. "You the one who left the baby?" David asked. Her shoulders twitched. "I just wanted him to live," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I couldn't take him home," he said. "He said if I told anyone he'd make me disappear. He told me if I ever said a word he'd find someone to hurt my baby, make it look like an accident. He said he owned me, owned my life and my choices." David's heart stopped. "Who said that, Chloe?" "What you did, leaving your baby where someone might find him," David said, kneeling in the snow, his voice firm but compassionate. "That wasn't cruelty. That was desperation. It was a cry for help, and Shadow, he heard it. He saved your baby's life. He heard your silent scream when no one else would." Chloe looked up at Shadow, her eyes wide with a fragile dawning hope. Shadow barked softly, a single, comforting sound. After a long silence, she whispered, "Can I see him just once?" The profound relief of finding empathy in unexpected places, a lifeline thrown into a sea of despair. Chloe then revealed her foster father, the man I lived with, Charles Ramsey, a known alcoholic with a history of quiet violence. He had told her no one would help her, that she'd be thrown in juvie, that no one wanted girls like her as mothers. "He made me carry the child alone, in silence," Chloe confessed. "He watched me, he followed me to the clinic. He said he knew everything. He said he'd make me regret it if I ever told." The chilling extent of Ramsey's psychological torment and control became terrifyingly clear. He hadn't just confined her, he had imprisoned her mind. 2 days later, Chloe, now in protective custody, sat in a quiet pediatric room at St. Mary's. Baby Hope, freshly bathed and bundled in yellow, slept soundly in his crib. Chloe reached out and touched his tiny hand, a tentative touch that spoke volumes. "I named him Noah," she said softly, "after the nurse who held my hand during delivery." David and Shadow stood sentinel by the door, watching. Chloe's tears, no longer of despair but of fragile hope, spilled down her cheeks. "I thought no one would care," she whispered. "But your dog, he cared. He heard me when no one else would." David cleared his throat. "He's safe. He's doing okay." Chloe asked, her voice barely a whisper, "I still can't keep him, can I?" David didn't lie. "I don't know what's going to happen yet, Chloe, but you did the right thing. That counts for more than you know." David reflected on Shadow's heroism. "You know, when he was younger, Shadow saved a lot of lives overseas, found bombs before they could blow, pulled men out of burning trucks. But this is something else. A calling, perhaps, that went beyond any badge or military order, a profound, almost spiritual purpose." Chloe smiled faintly. "He's got a good heart." But the shadows still lingered. Charles Ramsey, the foster father, attempted to visit Chloe at the hospital, exhibiting a cold, calculating manner. Security footage confirmed it. "He knows she talked," David grimly told Maria. Chloe and Noah were immediately relocated to a secure shelter on the outskirts of town. Even there, Shadow occasionally emitted low growls at seemingly empty corridors, or fixated on certain windows, despite no one being visible. It was like his senses, sharpened by the Afghanistan deserts, picked up on things no human could. The lingering scent of malice, the subtle shifts in air currents from an unseen presence. A predator was circling. Chloe confirmed David's fears. Ramsey had not only threatened to take Noah but declared, "He wants to make sure I don't exist. He'll erase me. He'll come for me." Ramsey had vanished, leaving no digital trace, yet David and Shadow sensed he was still watching, a ghost in the system, waiting for his moment. That evening, David walked Shadow down Willow Lane again, drawn irresistibly to the exact spot where Noah was saved. He crouched, looking down at his old partner. "Why here, buddy? Why that moment? What told you something was wrong?" Shadow didn't answer with words, of course, just stared up with those ageless, knowing eyes. And David realized with a quiet, powerful epiphany, it wasn't just something Shadow heard or smelled, Maybe it was something he felt. Fear, desperation, the cry that wasn't loud enough for a human ear, but somehow pierced the silence between souls. It was the sound of a mother's dying hope, a sound only a pure heart could translate. This profound revelation resonated deeply, suggesting that some truths are only accessible through intuition, through empathy, a spiritual connection that transcended logic. TPS updates confirmed Noah was thriving. Chloe was approved for extended protective status, and there was a note at the bottom. Subject may be eligible for kinship placement with responsible adult, pending background and capacity. David looked at a photo of him and Shadow on his fridge. He saw a chance to protect again, not as a cop, not as a soldier, but as something else entirely. A guardian, a family. While David and Shadow were hailed as heroes, whispers had begun circulating in Harmony Creek. Just a cop looking for a promotion, some mumbled. Why didn't they find the girl earlier if they're so good? Others grumbled, fueled by Gary's subtle misinformation. This cynical underbelly of society was a bitter pill for David, but trusting his gut and Shadow's unwavering loyalty, he knew what he had to do. He pulled a favor from an old friend at Children's Services. If there's no one else, he told the director, his voice firm, if the system can't find a placement that truly protects her, then I will. I'm not going to let her go back to people like him, or fall through the cracks of a broken system. That evening he drove back to the shelter, the sky bruised with pink. Listen, Chloe, he said. I know this is all moving fast and you've got a lot on your plate, but I'm not going anywhere. Chloe looked up, eyes unsure. What do you mean? David leaned forward. If it comes down to it, and there's no one else, you and Noah won't be alone. I'll be there. Shadow, too. Chloe blinked fast, tears welling. You'd really do that? David nodded. I don't make promises I can't keep. She swallowed hard, looking back down at her drawing. No one's ever said that to me before. Not truly. A new path was being forged. A chosen family beginning to form, built on trust and an unexpected promise. The phone buzzed. A county gas station on Route 14 reported a man matching Ramsey's description, buying a burner phone and whiskey at 2:00 a.m. Security footage confirmed it. Same coat, same build, same dead eyes. He's watching, Maria said, her voice grim, waiting for the moment the system slips. David's jaw tightened. Then, we don't stop looking. But then, the news broke. During a routine prison transfer, Ramsey had staged a violent escape, injuring 2 correctional officers. He was on the loose, a ghost back among the living. The news sent a chill through Harmony Creek. David's blood ran cold. He's coming for her, I know it. They doubled shelter guards, police vehicles parked at each end of the street. David stayed the night in his cruiser, Shadow curled in the back seat, agitated, restless. Every few hours David walked the perimeter, Shadow at his side, ears twitching, sensing the danger. He wasn't going to let Ramsey win, not this time. By 3:17 a.m., the exact time Chloe had dropped the bin, a shadow moved at the corner of the block. Dark coat, fast steps. David reached for his radio. Suspect in view. East End, moving on foot. He and Shadow moved fast, hugging the buildings, boots silent on the snow-dusted pavement. The figure darted through an alley. David followed, Shadow close, silent, a dark blur. At the end of the alley they split left, and there he was. Ramsey, cornered near a loading dock, his eyes burning with pure hate. David drew his weapon. Hands where I can see them, Ramsey! Ramsey froze, then laughed, a cold, bitter sound that sent shivers down David's spine. You're protecting a liar, he hissed. You think she's innocent? I don't think, Ramsey, David retorted, his voice steel, unwavering. I saw the bruises. I read the threats. You lost your chance to speak the moment you put a child in danger. Shadow stood in front of David, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Ramsey's eyes met the dog's, burning with unadulterated rage. That mutt cost me everything. David narrowed his eyes. No, Ramsey, you did that all by yourself. Ramsey, fueled by desperation and hatred, lunged. He pulled a knife. Shadow, without hesitation, launched himself forward, intercepting Ramsey's attack on David. The blade nicked Shadow's paw. Shadow let out a sharp yelp of pain, but didn't back down, barking furiously, a relentless wall between David and the attacker. Ramsey, momentarily stunned by Shadow's sheer courage and ferocity, was then tackled by David, hitting the ground hard. Ramsey screamed, I'll get you for this, you hear me? David pinned him, his voice low and firm. No, Ramsey, you won't. You'll pay for every single bit of it. They cuffed him. Shadow, his paw bleeding but not seriously, was quickly tended to by a medic. Chloe and Noah would sleep safely that night, truly safe, for the first time. The town of Harmony Creek grew quiet again. The snow melted, giving way to slushy sidewalks. But inside the county courthouse, something far more lasting was thawing. The weight of a broken silence. Chloe sat beside David on a long wooden bench outside the courtroom, gently rocking the carrier where baby Noah slept peacefully. Noah's cheeks were fuller now. His eyes stayed open longer, tracking Chloe's voice across the room. All things no one had thought possible that cold night behind the garbage truck. "You ready?" David asked softly. She nodded. "I think so." Her voice still shook sometimes. But not from fear anymore, from the sheer size of everything that had happened, the weight of her courage. Charles Ramsey had pleaded not guilty, but the evidence, Chloe's powerful testimony, the haunting notes, the healed bruises, the recovered camera footage that Gary couldn't hide, and David's unwavering report, painted a picture even his lawyer couldn't scrub clean. He was convicted of multiple charges including assault and child endangerment. The judge granted Chloe permanent supervised guardianship of Noah, praising her incredible courage. She had just turned 16, legally still a minor, but in every way that mattered, she'd already become something more: a mother, a survivor, a fighter. After the ruling, the courtroom emptied. Lauren Brandt from CPS gave Chloe a quick, tight hug. "You did it," she said. Chloe shook her head. "We did." She glanced at David and Shadow. They walked out into the crisp morning air. David opened the cruiser door for her. "You still sure about this next step?" Chloe buckled Noah in, a newfound confidence in her movements. "I know it's not forever, but I want to try. I want to build something real. For him. For us." David smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his face. "Then let's take the next step." They were headed back to David's house, not as officer and witness, but as a family. A chosen family, forged by fate and an old Labrador's unwavering heart. The house was quiet, small, a little dusty, but it had shadow, and it had room, and most of all, it had peace. Over the next few weeks, they settled into a rhythm. Noah had a tiny crib in the guest room. David helped Chloe apply for online GED classes, and she excelled, her sharp mind finally free to learn. Shadow, his paw now fully healed, never left either of their sides, curling beneath Noah's crib each night, ears perked at every creak and wind gust, a silent guardian. Chloe had started drawing again, big, sweeping scenes of animals in motion, eagles, horses, dogs. In one drawing, she'd sketched Shadow sitting like a statue under a full moon, a baby curled at his paws with the word guardian etched beneath, and a barely visible faint scar on his paw. David had framed it and hung it near the front door, a testament to silent bravery. One afternoon, Chloe came out onto the porch where David was fixing a sagging railing. Noah was asleep inside. Shadow rested nearby, his nose twitching in a dream. Chloe sat on the top step, knees pulled to her chest. "You know, if it wasn't for him," she said, glancing at Shadow, "Noah wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. He heard my silent scream when no one else would listen." David paused, putting down his tools. "You saved your son, Chloe. Don't forget that." Chloe shrugged. "I gave up on me. He didn't." David smiled. "That's just how he's wired. Shadow doesn't care about what people say or what they pretend to be. He listens to what they don't, to the truth hidden in the silence. We sometimes trust the calm facade of a community, the good old boys' networks, without looking deeper. Shadow taught me that sometimes the greatest dangers lurk behind the quietest doors. And sometimes the only warning you get is an unexplainable gut feeling, or a loyal dog's desperate bark." A month later, the town council invited David and Shadow to attend a community ceremony honoring local first responders. This time, the whispers from the cynical few were gone, replaced by genuine applause and tears. The mayor told the story of the night Shadow barked at the garbage truck, of how a life was saved, of how a retired dog still knew when something wasn't right. The crowd clapped, some cried. David knelt beside Shadow, placed his hand on his old partner's back. "He never quit," he said into the microphone, "and he never will, and neither should any of us, when it comes to fighting for what's right." Later that evening, back at home, they sat together on the porch, Noah in Chloe's arms, Shadow lying across David's boots. Sunset turned the sky the color of apricots and fire. "You think people can really overcome anything?" Chloe asked, her voice soft, full of newfound confidence. Like me? David took a deep breath. I think people don't always get to choose what happens to them, but they can choose what they do next. And you, Chloe, you chose to fight. You chose hope. That's a strength no one can take away. Chloe nodded, watching Noah wiggle in her arms. I want him to know that, she whispered, that he wasn't thrown away, that he was wanted, that he was the reason I fought. David looked at her, his voice quiet, his hand resting on Shadow's head. He'll know because you stayed, because you fought, because a dog wouldn't let the world ignore his cry, and he'll know he's surrounded by love, a love that barked him back to life. Chloe smiled, Shadow snored softly, and for once, everything felt still. In a good way. In the weeks that followed, David continued working with CPS on a long-term solution for Chloe and Noah. He wasn't sure how long they'd stay, but the house felt fuller now, like it had been waiting for them. One night, David stood at the kitchen sink washing dishes, listening to laughter echo from the living room where Chloe was reading to Noah. He caught himself smiling, and when he looked down, he saw Shadow staring up at him, tail thumping one. You knew, didn't you? David said. Shadow blinked slowly. Yes, he knew. Sometimes, heroes don't wear uniforms. They wear fur. They don't speak, but they shout with action. And they don't save the world with noise, but with a single bark at just the right moment. Shadow didn't just save a baby. He reminded everyone around him what it means to fight for life, even when the world is silent. To guard what's small, to hear what others can't, and to believe always that some cries are worth listening for, and that true strength isn't about how loud you are, but how persistent you are, especially when others have given up. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the quiet heroes in your own life, or if it gave you hope that even in the darkest moments, a flicker of light can break through, we want to hear from you. What part of Shadow's bravery resonated with you the most? Have you ever had a moment where intuition, or perhaps an animal, guided you through a difficult time? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories inspire us. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss more true, powerful stories of animal courage, human resilience, and the second chances that remind us all what it means to truly live. Thank you for listening.